The cry in the dark. It began on a rain-soaked night in the spring of 1958, when the quiet mining town of Oak Hill, West Virginia, was swallowed by fog thick enough to hide the moon. Most of the miners were asleep, their boots left by the door, and their wives sat by the windows listening to the wind that rattled the loose panes. But on Pine Creek Road at the edge of town, a scream cut through the storm, sharp, raw, and unmistakably human. Neighbors thought it was the wind howling through the valley until they heard it again. A woman's voice, crying out from the yard behind the old Lilly house. The house had stood empty for nearly 2 months. Mary Lilly, a 27-year-old widow who'd moved there after her husband's mining accident, had vanished one evening after a visit to the local store. Her groceries were later found spilled along the roadside, as if she dropped them mid-step. The sheriff's men searched the woods, the creek, and even drained a small pond behind her property, but no sign of her was ever found. Eventually, the search was called off, and the town went back to its rhythm of work, church, and silence. Until that night, Clara Whitman, Mary's next-door neighbor, told police she was woken by a soft knocking on her back door. "I thought it was the wind," she said, trembling as she recounted the story. "But then I saw her, standing in the yard, soaked to the bone, her dress white and torn. I swear it was Mary. She looked right at me." Clara ran to wake her husband, but by the time he stepped outside with a flashlight, the yard was empty. Only footprints remained, small, bare prints leading to the old oak tree where Mary used to hang laundry. Then they simply stopped. The sheriff dismissed it as hysteria, blaming the weather and nerves. But the next night, a miner named Jacob Price, heading home from a late shift, claimed he saw the same figure wandering near the Lilly property. "She was dragging her hand along the fence," he said. "Didn't even look at me. Just kept walking toward the back of the yard." By the end of that week, 6 people had reported seeing the woman in the yard. Some swore she was crying. Others said she was whispering words they couldn't quite hear. A few insisted she was trying to speak, to warn them. Then the smell began. It came from the ground behind Mary's house, a thick, sour odor that lingered despite the cold spring air. Sheriff Dalton finally ordered his deputies to dig near the oak tree, where the footprints had once ended. It didn't take long before they found her. Just 3 feet beneath the surface lay the remains of Mary Lilly. Her body was curled tightly, her hands bound with a length of rope, and her head turned sharply to the side. Her mouth was open, as if caught mid-scream. The coroner later confirmed she had died from blunt force trauma, likely struck with a heavy object. The news spread through Oak Hill like wildfire. Church bells tolled that Sunday not in celebration, but in mourning. The people who had seen her ghost whispered that she had been trying to lead them to her grave. For weeks after the discovery, the town was heavy with fear, not just of her killer, who was never caught, but of what might linger after death. One night, shortly after Mary's funeral, Clara heard the same sound again, faint, distant, but unmistakable. A woman's cry. She woke her husband, but he told her it was just the wind. When she looked out the window, she saw something that froze her where she stood. The swing in Mary's yard was moving back and forth, though the night was still. Within days, the house was boarded up and the property left to rot. Weeds grew over the grave site, and the oak tree stood like a dark sentinel watching over the empty yard. Yet, even as the years passed, no one dared to move in. Children whispered about seeing a pale figure behind the fence, or hearing soft crying from the shadows. Decades later, when the land was sold for development, construction workers digging near the foundation reported strange things. Tools disappearing, sudden chills, the sound of footsteps in the dirt. One man quit on the spot after seeing what he described as a woman standing by the tree, staring with no eyes. The police logs still hold the old reports, faded ink on yellowed paper. Witness statements, descriptions of a woman in a white gown, notes about how her hair appeared wet, even on clear nights. Every account ends the same way. Subject disappeared from sight. To this day, locals say if you drive down Pine Creek Road on a foggy night and park by the old fence line, you might hear it, a soft cry carried by the wind, echoing through the hollow where Mary Lilly's house once stood. They say it's her voice, still calling out, not for vengeance, but for peace. The return to Pine Creek Road. 65 years had passed since the night Mary Lilly's body was unearthed beneath the oak tree, but the story of the woman in the yard still lingered like smoke in Oak Hill, whispered in bars and retold by campfires. The house had long since rotted away, but no one ever built on that land again. Locals claimed the ground wouldn't hold anything. Concrete cracked, grass died, and even the air felt wrong, heavy somehow. In 2023, a young investigative journalist named Evelyn Marsh drove into Oak Hill with a camera and a notebook. She had been researching unsolved murders of women in Appalachia when she came across the name Mary Lilly. The details fascinated her: a small town, a vanished widow, a ghost said to haunt her own grave. Evelyn didn't believe in hauntings, but she believed in stories. And this one, she thought, might hold something deeper, a truth buried beneath all the superstition. The old sheriff's office still had the case files locked away, yellowed and brittle. Evelyn sat in the dusty records room for hours, turning over reports written by men who'd been dead for decades. The handwriting was uneven, but one note caught her attention. Witness Clara Whitman insists she saw the victim 2 nights before the body was found. Description matches. Impossible if time of death correct. That single line gnawed at Evelyn's curiosity. How could Clara have seen Mary after her death, unless someone was trying to make it look that way? When she interviewed the few surviving townsfolk, they didn't want to talk. The oldest residents would only shake their heads. One man, nearly 90, muttered, "Don't go digging where she sleeps, girl. That ground's already cursed." But Evelyn went anyway. The old yard was hard to find, swallowed by thick brush and saplings. The oak tree still stood, hollowed in the middle. The bark split like old skin. Her recorder picked up nothing but the wind at first. She began taking photos of the site, focusing on the remains of a stone foundation. Then her equipment flickered. The camera shut off by itself. Her flashlight dimmed, and her phone screen went black. She froze when she heard it. Soft footsteps behind her. "Hello," she called, trying to sound calm. The wind had stopped, but something was moving near the tree. When she turned her light toward it, she saw a pale outline of a woman's dress between the branches, unmoving. For a second, Evelyn thought it was a trick of the fog. But then, the figure shifted. The light caught something. Wet fabric, long dark hair clinging to her shoulders. And though Evelyn couldn't see her face clearly, she saw the mouth move, forming words she couldn't hear. Then the air went cold. A metallic scent, iron and damp soil, filled her nose. And just as quickly as it appeared, the figure was gone. The next morning, Evelyn tried to rationalize what she'd seen. Maybe an animal, maybe exhaustion. But when she reviewed the audio from her recorder, her stomach turned cold. At the exact moment she'd seen the figure, there was a faint voice, whispering through static. "Still here." She returned to town shaken but determined. Back in the archives, she found a file she hadn't noticed before. An old statement from Henry Whitman, Clara's husband. It had been marked confidential. In it, Henry confessed he'd once helped Sheriff Dalton bury something behind the Lilly house the night before the official search began. He never said what, only that the sheriff didn't want the town to see her that way. The note ended abruptly. Heard crying from the yard that night. Never went back. Evelyn realized what it implied. The sheriff might have been involved, or at least complicit. Maybe Mary had discovered something about her husband's death in the mines, something someone wanted buried along with her. That night, Evelyn returned to the yard again, this time with a shovel and her camera on record. She dug where the oak's roots split the ground, the same place the body had been found decades ago. Just a few inches beneath the soil, her shovel hit something solid, a rusted tin box. Inside were fragments of newspaper, a broken locket, and a folded photograph of a man she recognized from the sheriff's file, Sheriff Dalton himself, standing arm in arm with Mary Lilly. As she examined the photo, the air changed again. The wind rose suddenly, howling through the hollow oak, and the camera in her hand began to vibrate. Through the lens, she caught sight of movement again, the same pale figure, closer this time. The whisper came louder now, layered and desperate. "He buried me alive." The shovel dropped from Evelyn's hand. The fog rolled in fast, covering the ground. The figure turned its head. the hollow of her eyes catching the dim light from Evelyn's camera. And then, just as quickly as she'd appeared, she faded, leaving behind the faint sound of soil shifting. When Evelyn's footage was later recovered, found inside her abandoned car at the edge of Pine Creek Road, it showed only fragments: the oak tree, the dig site, the tin box, and a brief flash of white fabric at the edge of the frame. No one ever saw her again. Locals now say that on certain nights, two voices can be heard crying in the yard, one soft and sorrowful, the other panicked, as if calling for help. Some say it's Mary and Evelyn, forever bound to the place where truth and death became one. And the oak tree still stands, waiting,